All right. Welcome to the second breakdown of our Tigers top 46 list here at TigersMLReport.com. And I'm Rogelio Castillo. Alongside me is Chris Brown. And so if you watched the first one, which was 46 through
36, I believe.
Sorry, 46 to 36. That's available through our paywall or before paywall. So if you got it on our YouTube channel, great. Before everybody else did, that's awesome. And so our goal with these, and there's a written component too as well. You can find it on our website probably in the next couple days or so. But right now they're on behind the paywall. Early access, just get that, and then there's also be prospect reports to come with this. And so, but most importantly, as somebody we were just talking to Ashley, who was on the Motor City Metrics podcast, she is an audio listener of the podcast, and so sometimes people forget we have a YouTube channel. So, or it's more often than not, it's the other way around. So like and subscribe to our channel goes a long way. And we do have a podcast out there. If you go to iTunes, search for Tigers Minor Report or Motor City Metrics, which if some people who might remember us from Tigers SRD. So it's going on. Yeah, it's almost a decade now. Wow. So that being said, we start with number 35 in Jim Jarvis, who we saw again. It's our annual trip to Lansing is something I look forward to, Chris. I love that park. It's one of those parks that I worry that with the potential changing of the minor league agreement again in a few years that we might not see games there anymore. Mm-hmm. I hope that's not I hope that's not the case at all.
Yeah, no, I love it too. It's just kind of it's got the feel of an old timey ballpark, right? It's just the odd dimensions and everything about it's fun. The games are usually highly competitive with a lot of scoring. And yeah, we got to see Jarvis. He was the Tigers' 11th round pick in 2023, and he kind of fits a lot of the archetypes we've kind of assumed the Tigers seek in the draft. He's a fairly athletic, up the middle defender with a good hit tool. Although that's kind of misleading here. It's not necessarily a good hit tool in his case. It's more like, he controls the strike zone. But he's definitely one of those guys that I think the first thing I wrote was that he just grows on you the more you watch him. Because it's just I was telling you it's hard not to use the kind of coded language for the small and athletic white guy with Jim Jarvis, like you call him gritty or he's a gamer. But he does kind of fit a lot of those stereotypes. I think he's a better athlete than you would, call like a David Eckstein or whatever. But yeah, he doesn't really have a plus tool. He's 5'10", 180, 190 pounds. So there's not power, not a lot of power there, but there is some power. But yeah, there's a really good play right there, ranging behind second base almost all the way to where the second baseman was standing to throw out a guy at first. He is an above average runner with at least average, if not above average, arm strength and defense. And he can play second, third, and shortstop. So that's really valuable no matter what. He's either going to be a quality minor leaguer in the system for many years, or he's going to figure the hit tool out and become maybe a solid utility man at the big league level. But yeah, go ahead.
He's a guy who can barrel it up. There's times where we've seen him. He is a guy who can really, as far as like mentioned, it almost the Tigers used to draft guys like this in a sense, like the Danny Wirfs in the world. But I think there's a little more athletic ability with this type, because you can sit there and say that if it's an SEC player, of course they're going to draft somebody like this. But reason why I like Jarvis is if you look at his swing path too, like he's a good job of barreling it up.
Visually, it's a nice looking swing. I don't have any issues with it. It's short, it's quick. He does, he sprays the ball over the field. He can pull it with some good exit velocity, but he's never ever hit for batting average. Which is strange. He walks a decent amount. He rarely chases. His chase rate is under 8%. Or swing and miss rate, I should say. So he's not swinging and missing a lot. He hits the ball on the ground too often, and I think he may just be one of those guys who struggles against quality secondary pitches. And when he's swinging at it, like he can make contact with it, but he's not putting a charge into it. And so he's hitting soft ground balls somewhere. And that's killing his batting average. But he does just about everything else, pretty well. Again, he's not a big power guy, but he can hit you a handful of home runs. So, like I said, there's a chance he can grow into a utility role at the big league level. But right now, it seems equally as likely that he's just going to be kind of an Andrew Navigato type who sticks around the system forever and is a winner and a good player, but maybe he's not a big leaguer.
But he's the guy too that's making adjustments too. If you look at here, this is from last year, 2023, or 2 years ago when he first got drafted.
Mm-hmm.
You notice his swing. Look at his swing mechanics right here, Chris. Like the barrel's kind of out there. It's waggling a little bit. Feet very wide stance.
It looks like he's choking up. He doesn't have a huge load, so it looks like it's a swing kind of designed for. He has made some changes here. He's a little bit more upright, it seems, and less pre-swing movement. But
yeah, I mean, even if you look at his feet too, Chris, it looks like it's a lot less spread out too. He's not. Yeah. Feet are a lot more stationary. They're not as doing a lot of crazy side to side movement until he gets right into his setup.
Yeah, I think he's a guy to me that, like, I don't know, given his kind of bat to ball skills and his lack of swing and miss, I wonder if you could add just a little bit of loft to his swing, not necessarily like Winslow Perez style.
Yeah, but
maybe in that way so that he's hitting more line drives, and when he gets a hold of one, he puts it over the fence. I think that's possible with him. But he has to go out and do it, because if he doesn't, like I said, he hit what, like 219 in West Michigan. I'm looking, and that was over like 60 games, 70 games.
And it could be a case too where if he's working on his batting mechanics, like we just saw there, like the difference between him and this year or last year rather, could be a case where he's still working things out. So I like to think that this is a year where we'll see some progress with that, because I think that the swing, especially that there's always that adjustment period a little bit when you go to high A. Like the Midwest League is not a hitting friendly league at all.
No,
I mean, you really have to, if you're mashing in the Midwest League, then that says something about you.
It's one of those, it's just kind of confounding, because you look, okay, so he had 11.1% walk rate and a strikeout rate of just 13.8%. So, he's walking a fair amount, not striking out a lot, putting the ball in play a ton. He hit 216. with a 238 batting average on balls in play. So there's something going on there where he's just not hitting the ball hard enough. They got to figure out what that is. And if he can fix that, then yeah, we might have something.
Yeah. Which goes to, speaking of, I might have something at number 34, Tyler Matson, and he's coming back from injury. So the clips are perhaps a little dated, but this was him picking up his first save in Erie in 2023. And there's a lot to like about his fastball command. We were taught, it was funny how by accident we realized that he came from the same area in New York that the Indians pitcher James Kantrack came from. And so the Tigers we've noted that the Tigers have scouted that area pretty well in the last 5 or 6 years. Jason Foley comes to mind. There's another, I'm trying to think if there's another pitcher in there that they recently drafted too. Andrew Sears.
From UConn.
Yeah, UConn. So the Tigers are doing a really good job of scouting the Northeast for pitching, which is it to me is a different change of pace, because the Tigers used to be very SEC friendly. Just, it was a lot of times to go to the SEC for that. But there's a lot to like about Matson here. He can pitch well against lefties and righties, and his command, he showed really plus command coming up to Erie.
Yeah, I mean, so he's a pure reliever, right? He was a starter at Bryant, and then they moved him to the bullpen immediately when he got into the system. And then, his first year, I guess that would have been 2022, wasn't great. I think he had some injuries. Maybe it was 21. Yeah, it was 22. And he went to the AFL and was fine. But then, 2023, he was excellent. He came up to he pitched his way out of West Michigan, came up to Erie, and I think we talked about before, he had like 10 straight scoreless innings in Erie before he gave up, any damage. And the stuff is legit. It's fastball's like 94 to 97. He'll touch 98. It's got a ton of spin. It's like 2,600, 2,650, 2,700 RPMs, which would, be among the highest in the majors. And it also has a ton of ride on it, the induced vertical break, is consistently like 19 to 22 inches, which again would be near the top in Major League Baseball. And you can see it's kind of a high 3/4, almost over the top arm angle, but it's also like a short arm action. Like Jaden Ham throws with a similar angle, but it's a much longer arm action. So I think Madison gets a little bit more deception. So the fastball's really good, and he throws it a lot, but he also has, and you've seen him in these highlights, he's got a pretty good downer curve. It's not like a huge breaker. It's kind of it's like a short downer, I guess is what I call it. And at times it has more depth than at others, but it works for him. And he also throws a pretty decent changeup in the upper 80s that keeps left-handers off balance. So he's got 3 real pitches. The fastballs could be a plus pitch in time. And yeah, I mean, his walk rate was a little high, I think, and you can see it's kind of a high effort delivery. So there are going to be times when he's just not finding the zone, but he's going to live at the top of the zone with that fastball. And coming back from Tommy John surgery, you hope that his control and command rounded to form later in the season. And, you know, the Tigers added him to the 40-man, and he does have late inning bullpen potential, I think. I don't know if it's quite closer stuff, because I don't think he has a true like plus secondary pitch, but the fastball itself might be good enough to get a lot of outs.
Yeah, I can see him maybe getting opportunity in the 7th inning early on.
Yeah.
As a guy who could be kind of like, I don't want to say a specialist per se, but essentially if there's one pitch that Federer can use to, if they can exploit it and get somebody out with it, I think that would be like, just because based off his fastball action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm excited to see. I could see him starting the year in Toledo. Once he's 100%, maybe get some opportunity. That was a weird play.
minor league baseball.
Myers, get the hell out of my way. So yeah, there's an opportunity for him to start the season in Toledo, get some opportunities to close out a game or two. Toledo's bullpen's going to be pretty. I'm starting to look at it early on. Toledo's bullpen's going to be pretty good. So
yeah, they've added a lot of really interesting relievers, and they've you know, even in sort of minor league free agent signings, they've added some interesting arms that you don't really think much about. Just like we didn't think much about Brennan Hanafy and Sean Gunther. Yeah. And you know, they're very serious about helping everybody get better, because they never know when they're going to call on you, and so who knows when those guys will pop up. You know, who was it? Easton Lucas last year came up for a little bit. Like somebody, if they've signed you, you might be coming up. But yeah, interested to see Madison get back on the mound for sure.
So next up on our list at number 33 is Max Anderson. And he was the guy who led the Big Ten in hitting over in Nebraska. And, you know, I think with the development of McGonigal and a lot of other, again, just one of those guys that suddenly becomes really good system depth. He's a guy who can hit the can hit the ball in the air, out to right, but he doesn't have a position. Is that fair to say, Chris?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, I think, you know, we do our best to not like be mean. Like I'm trying not to be a jerk about players. They're trying really hard. Some of them have really good skills. They have limitations. But Max Anderson is just a really tough profile for me. And you know, who am I? I could be completely wrong. But yeah, he's got really good kind of pure bat to ball skills. He's he doesn't strike out much. It's like a 14% strikeout rate, but he doesn't walk much either. He swings at just about everything. But he's kind of got this rough combination of he does have at least an average, if not plus, raw power. You can see like some of his home runs he hits, they don't look like they're going far, and then they just, you know, explode out to center field. So the power is there. The main thing for him is he just, and then as he pulls a home run, he is a very opposite field heavy hitter. He hits a lot of soft ground balls and soft contact to the opposite field, this video notwithstanding. And so that kind of saps a lot of his power. And so, you know, there's an opposite field home run, I think, but it's going to be an issue for him going forward. And there's another player on our list who's very similar, and it becomes tough to do much damage when your profile is away and on the ground for the most part. And then you talk about, the defense. Like he's nominally a second baseman. He can play second base, but it's pretty rough out there. He's not a terribly, you know, agile, quick-footed guy. And so he doesn't have a ton of range. And, you know, he can make the plays at second base for the most part, and his arm is good enough for second base, but it's not ideal. And he had a lot of trouble at times last year with, like, if he had to charge a ball and throw on the move, or run to his right or his left and throw on the move, he threw. There was a lot of errors. He got better on that over the course of the year, but it was still kind of rough. And so he feels a little bit like he should be playing first base at the corner outfield, but then you have the issue with not as much game power. So I just, like I said, I don't want to be mean, but it's hard for me to find a big league future for him unless he makes a concerted effort to pull the ball in the air more, which he might do. He's only 23, so I don't want to bury him at all, but he needs to make some changes.
No, agreed. I mean, if you look at it's the same kind of, we were talking about Jim Jarvis earlier about getting the ball in the air more, that would help him. And it's the same thing with Anderson. I think with Max Anderson, he's a guy who you could potentially might even see get some time in the corner spots, and just as like kind of like a utility player. I think there's ability to be a utility guy with Max Anderson. And the one thing that I love to see is, I mean, I'm sure he's going to get some time in Erie this year, is how is he going to do against advanced pitching?
Yeah, I mean, he got up to Erie at the end of last year, and I don't think it was only like a handful of games, so you don't really know what.
Yeah,
you can't make a ton of it, and he was up there for the playoffs. I'm looking to see how he did. So just literally a handful of games, 5 games with Erie at the end, 22 plate appearances. He went 4 for 22 with a pair of doubles, 3 strikeouts, 3 walks. So, whatever.
Extended period of time,
it's fine.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I didn't mean to say but I think he's going to start in Erie. I think you're right, and it'll be a challenge for him, and we'll see. Erie might work out pretty well sometimes when the wind gets blowing there. The ball really flies to right field and right center, so he might hit for more power there. I just think that as he, like you said, as he faces more advanced pitching, they're going to do what they did to the other guy later on the list, which is basically just jam him inside all day long. And if he can't turn on the fastball inside, then he doesn't really have much hope.
Yeah, and that's where that really Double-A is where you make or break yourself a little bit. Honestly, that's no way to go about that. So next up on our list is another a pair of relievers, actually 3 straight relievers.
Well,
what's up?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know for sure yet, right?
Oh, it's true. This is true. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because
there's a pair of 2024 draft picks. Josh Randall, who I believe was their 4th round pick.
Third round pick. Yep.
And Michael Massie, who was picked in the next round.
Yep, correct.
So yeah, and this is one of those things where there are only a handful of players on the list like this, where we're just kind of trusting everybody else's scouting reports, right? Because we've never seen these guys play. Randall, I guess we did see Randall pitched a couple of innings in Lakeland late in the season, and yeah, he's a kind of shares some background with Troy Melton, he was like a former catcher who didn't really start a lot until late in his career. I think he was a reliever earlier, but he's a big dude. He's like 6'4", 240, and it's a mid-90s fastball that's almost exclusively a 2-seamer. I guess he does have a 4-seamer, but he almost throws all 2-seamers, and then it's sliders. It's a really kind of east-west profile, and they talk about it being a bowling ball sinker. When you watch it, it doesn't seem to actually have much vertical movement, but it's very much, horizontal movement. And I think that part of that is from his. You see, he drops down, and it's kind of a lower arm slot. So I think he can really work inside to right-handers and throw the slider away. And it's just a matter of how much he develops. He's got a cutter that he throws to, and he had a changeup. He throws a few of them in this video here, but they're like 89 miles an hour, which is probably not enough separation between his fastball. But so there's the chance to be kind of a back end starter and grow into that in time, and because he holds his velocity deep in outings. But yeah, there's also the chance he just kind of, you throw him in the bullpen as a sinker slider guy, and he's sitting 97, 98 instead of 93, 95, and you've got something.
Yeah, like a swing guy. You can almost see him like possibly being a multi-inning reliever. Where, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like maybe what the Tigers might do with him and Massie is perhaps do like just kind of have that staggered effect where we saw this early in the season last year in the minor leagues, where in Lakeland, for example, it wasn't a definitive. You really didn't know who was definitively starting outside of maybe Rainer Castillo, right? I remember there was a lot of guys that were doing 3 or 4 inning skits or innings, like Jake Miller comes to mind as an example.
Yeah, they did a lot of seemingly tandem starts, and like you said, a lot of like 3 inning, 4 inning outings. Garrett Burhan, Andrew Sears, all those guys. And I imagine that's what we'll see to begin this year. Is even if they think that both these guys are relievers down the line, I think unlike Madison, I think they're going to continue developing them as starters, giving them starter innings just to work on their pitches, and work on their command, rather than shoot them through the system, which I think. Could be more possible with Massie than Randall. Massie, we actually interviewed a few months back, and he's got another kind of interesting story because he was a starter at Tulane as a freshman, and then he transferred to Wake Forest and was one of the best relievers in college baseball. Just absolutely filthy as a guy with a mid-90s fastball with a ton of ride, like Madison's fastball, and also a really good slider. You'll see some of them here, I think. Just a really good, just like a lot of depth, but also some sort of movement away from right-handed hitters. It's a kind of classic 2-plane slider, and that one wasn't very good, but but so then he was awesome as a reliever as a sophomore, and then Wake Forest moved him back to the rotation as a junior last year, and he wasn't as good. He wasn't throwing as hard. He worked in a curveball and a changeup. And they, none of them were as good as. So here you go. There's your changeup. But again, he's like a big, strong guy who looks like he could be a starter. There's kind of a short arm action there that maybe some people don't like in their starters, but it doesn't seem like a ton of effort otherwise. So I think the Tigers are going to continue developing him as a starter. But like I said, he's a guy, if you just throw him in the bullpen, he's sitting 95, 98 with a really nasty breaking ball. That's a guy who could move very quickly if he stays healthy.
Yeah, there was another thing, too. We talked about that he had back surgery. So that could have been a reason why his numbers maybe have not been as well in his junior year. But that transition, too, between going back being, I think, was he the Friday night starter or was he more of the back end?
I think he may have started as a Friday night starter and may have been moved to Sunday by the end of the season. I don't really know for sure, but
okay,
it wasn't a great year for him.
Yeah, it's okay because I mean, quite frankly, it does. I think that you mentioned this just with Randall. If you're going to be a starter like in A ball, that'll give you an opportunity to work on your pitches better because you have the opportunity to go through the lineup multiple times, and so. If there's one thing that we've looked at what the Tigers have done is that, for example, there might be a time where a certain pitcher might struggle, but they're just working on a pitch. And it's not like it was before where it's just like, let's get 6 innings and let's just get this over with. There's a certain plan with every pitcher that the Tigers have. And so it could be the case with Massie too, where they could be, I don't know. Randall, I like the way this ended up on our order. By the way, I think because they're also roommates too.
Yeah, it's I mean, we end up like you said. There's kind of 3 relievers in a row. We're kind of curious about these guys. We think they may be relievers in the end. The next guy is a for sure reliever. The Tigers added him in the Andrew Chafin deal.
Yeah,
or was it the Carson Kelly deal?
Yeah, Carson Kelly. Yeah, it's Kelly. Yeah,
Tyler Owens, who is kind of an undersized reliever, if you will. He's only like 5'10", but he's got some power in his arm, and his strikeout rate really skyrocketed when he came over from Texas. The Tigers, I think, I'd be curious what they did. I think he probably threw his splitter a little bit more. He seemed like he was starting to work on that with Round Rock or whoever it was, their AA affiliate. And I think he probably was locating his fastball in different areas. But yeah, he came up. He was a very key member of this Erie bullpen down the stretch. I think we talked about before. I believe he got the final outs in the championship game.
Yes, he did. Yep.
And we the fastball. It sits like 95, 96, but he got up to 99. I think maybe even 100.
Yeah, 99. He hit 99 in the series against Somerset.
And so,
Binghamton. Sorry, Binghamton.
The one thing, like, I kind of made a comparison, and I don't know how, depending on the age of the people listening, he reminds me a lot of kind of the relievers that the Tigers had all the time from like 2007 to 2014. The Brian Villarreals, the Lester Oliveroses, the Jose Ortegas, these guys that would show up a little bit, and they'd have a fastball. You can even throw Ryan Perry in there if you want. They have a big fastball, and their slider would occasionally look like an above average pitch, but it just wasn't as consistent as it needed to be. And I feel like that's going to be a big development kind of focus for Owens, because I think that breaking ball just needs to get a little bit more consistent, because the fastball is pretty good, and more work on the splitter, which is I think his third pitch, but like you say, it's velocity. It's from a kind of a funky low angle, so it gets it's a different look for guys, and I don't know. He's got some seventh, eighth inning relief potential, I think.
Yeah, I think he has. I'll go on a limb and say I think he has closer potential based off the fact that that again, going last year, watching him in the postseason, be able to kind of, and even a little bit with Round Rock too. I thought they had a good job of having that closer instinct. Like having the ability to go that split finger as a good strikeout pitch, and that's what you need to be, at least in my opinion, to be a good closer, is to have that ability to not only set up your first, to set up your strikeout pitch, to set up, like, if you're gonna use the fastball on top of the zone and something to use like a wipeout pitch to get that strikeout, I think bodes well for Owens. And this was a very good pickup for the Tigers. It was very under the radar, just because just watching him pitch the last month of the season, watching a lot of that Erie postseason, it was just impressive to see, because it was just like exactly like what we saw in 2023 with Matson and the guy they traded to Milwaukee. I always forget.
Blake Holub.
Blake Holub.
Yeah.
And it was along the same lines. And I think that maybe this is their replacement for Blake Holub in a sense, because
I think that's probably fair to say. I mean, it's a guy with late inning potential. You've seen in this particular sequence, we've seen him throw two really good splitters. He's there's three, split changes. Of course, he didn't get to cover first, and there was a disaster. This outing wasn't great, but his pitches were fine, and he dotted the outside corner at 98. He threw up at 99. Like there's stuff there for sure. It's just a little bit more consistency, which is not.
Damn, that's wow.
I think that might have been Max Anderson right there. So yeah, that there's just a little bit more work, but they added him to the 40-man roster too, so they definitely believe in him as a potential big league reliever.
Yeah, and what more can you want for a guy that you really didn't have to really spend a lot on? I mean, it's just the credit to the Tigers scouting department on that, because he's a guy that when the first initial came over, it was like, who?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I don't know. They do good jobs. It's hard to argue with some of these the pro scouting they do.
So next up, number 29. So Tyler owns number 30. Going into our 20s is Jose Dickson, and so he's the first one where like we don't have a lot of video at all.
Yeah. I went back and I started collecting some video from the DSL. I got him hitting a triple, but it's the videos aren't great, so I don't know if it's even worth putting up. But I do have one swing, so I do have from Josh Norris from Baseball America. Yeah. He really likes Dickson's swing, and take a look for yourself.
And you easily see why. I mean, it's a very, very smooth. Look at the balance there, front foot, just a nice stride as he puts that front foot forward. Head down, it's a beautiful swing.
Yeah, and he was one of their higher priority international signings a couple of years ago, and he's the youngest player on our list. I think he's still 17. Like we don't normally like to rank guys like this, right? It's and I think, as a matter of fact, I don't think you did. I think it was me and Jerry.
Yes,
you're true to your word all the time. But he's going to be on other people's lists. He's going to be on Pipeline's list. He's going to be on Baseball America's list, because he had a really solid debut in the Dominican Summer League. Now, no home runs, but he hit 273, 407, 40, or 374. So a 15% walk rate, a 15% strikeout rate. Again, anybody can walk on the DSL, but the strikeout rate is fine. And if you're going like close 1-1, that's a good sign. And the big thing with him is that he seems to have the bat to ball skills. He's got speed. He stole 18 bases, but he's also 6'2" in 160 pounds right now. So you got to figure in his prime he's going to be 185, 190. And if you're making contact and you added 25 pounds of muscle, there's a chance you're going to hit for power. And it sounds like, again, we haven't seen him really. So the scouting reports say that he's a good defender at shortstop and has enough arm if he has to move to third base. So that's enough for me to kind of just throw him on the back of the list and say, hey, this is a guy who's worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just have to see more of it. And that's where, like, I know that people give me shit about that, but if we all saw things as the way we do, I don't think our list would be the same, and then there'd be no variety,
Yeah, and it's like we say, if we're basing our scouting report on other people's scouting reports, then why are you coming to us? Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So it's just I don't know. It's one of those things where there's that side to it, and then there's also the side like, well, is the list, shouldn't he be on the list? Like, isn't he an interesting enough guy to mention? So. And that's where we went with him, and there's not going to be a whole lot to write about him, that's for sure. But
yeah, like I know we got a couple questions about if Chris Rodriguez was going to be on our list, but we haven't seen him play at all. And
I that's one thing I will not ever do is I guess if they, I won't say not ever do, but if they were to sign some absolute phenom stud, Salas DeVries type guy, number one international prospect consensus, then we'd probably put him on the list. But
if he's Harrison's age and he's doing what...
yeah, exactly, yeah. So, but yeah, it's I don't know. We just haven't seen much from him, so it's tough to say more than what we already said.
Yeah. So next up on our list, and number 28, he came in like Casey Kasem style, like just like came in. I'm doing a terrible Casey. Forget it. Never mind. I'm making a Casey Kasem reference, and no one might even know who he is. But coming in at number 28 is Eddys Leonard, and this is a guy who you wonder. It's like the big what if. What if he was healthy? What if he did not get injured because he had a real spring, and he then got injured and then just kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. I think out of all the prospects last year, or in the last 2 years, we get a lot of questions about him, whether he is, because of course with Baez struggling short, is he going to be the heir apparent to him playing short? And the answer is no. He doesn't. I think sometimes he struggles with side to side motion at short. He has a decent arm, but he has a really good swing. Like he's a good hitter. He has good speed, just really good speed as well. But it's just a matter of case of health, and he just could not stay healthy last year.
Yeah, he came a couple different injuries, and Evan Petzold from the Freep wrote a really nice article about him. He also wrote a really nice article about Brendan White, about Leonard went down to play in the Caribbean Series or whatever. He was playing for Yadier Molina and was talking about what he learned down there. But yeah, it's people were excited about him because he was putting up numbers in spring training, and he hits the ball surprisingly hard for a guy who's not huge, right? I mean, he's built, but he's not gigantic. And he's got some offensive potential and some defensive versatility. Like you said, he's not a true shortstop. He can fill in at shortstop, but it would be pretty ugly if he was playing there every day. But he can play a little third base, a little second base. He can probably play outfield corners. So
center field.
There's he just smoked that ball to center. He's got, so there's power. There's some defensive versatility. The one big question mark with him, at least last year, was he tended to swing at everything. He's not a guy who works a big walk rate, and he chases and swings and misses a lot. A pretty, concerning amount. And that's one of the reasons that the Tigers, I think, were able to, designate him for assignment and then re-sign him. But, and like you said, he had a couple different injuries last year, and he got really hot at the very end of the season when nobody was paying attention in Toledo. And that's just the way it goes. And like you said, had he been healthy, he may have come up instead of Winsel Perez, and last year may have been completely different. But it was bad timing. But he's back in the system. We like a lot of the things he does. I often make the comparison to Andy Ibanez. in that type of player. I don't know if
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to be that level of left-handed destructor, but I think that's the kind of player that he could be.
Yeah, it has the same build too as well, and
Yeah.
that's a good call out there. And the last thing I'll say about him too is I think he has the ability also to play the outfield in a pinch. Like
Yeah, no,
not
I
like
think
an
he did.
everyday, like he was. I saw him in Toledo play the outfield a couple times. He wasn't bad. I think he was playing left when I saw him live, and he was serviceable. And so
Mhm.
that kind of position versatility does help. And the numbers too is like we were talking about this a little earlier. Coming in from the PCL, Oklahoma City, those numbers like it always takes a minute to translate to if you're going to the international league because PCL numbers are always so deceiving. But he backed those up so far in his time here, and I think honestly, if push comes to shove, depending on what the Tigers do here in the next couple days or so, as we're recording this, he's a guy that maybe if he has good camp, if there's could get a call up at some point, if depending on how injuries with the team.
I mean, he would be a guy I would consider for third base if like you said, if something goes wrong, if Young and Vierling get hurt and they don't sign Bregman, then I don't know. I mean, you'd probably have Ibanez or McKinstry there, but you never know. I mean, injuries happen, and I think Leonard does have a chance to get called up this year.
Yeah. So our next guy that is up on our list at number 27 is Justice Bigby, and Bigby is a guy who was really, I think he was on top 10 at one point.
He may have gotten close. I don't know if he got into the top 10. He may have been like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, after he had an awesome 2023, climbed from West Michigan all the way up to Toledo, got better in Erie than he was in West Michigan, and then he just seems to have hit a wall in Toledo. And he's the guy I was referring to earlier when I was talking about Max Anderson. He has the same sort of batted ball profile.
Yeah, he could work counts pretty well. Like he's had some really good long. This is another one here that you were talking about from spring training where he also had a really good spring training too.
Yeah.
And he has really good eye at the plate. The exit velocity was in Toledo. Wasn't it kind of an issue a little bit? Wasn't it in terms of just
the exit velocities are spectacular.
Yeah.
It's like if you just looked at the data, you'd be like, oh man, this guy's a stud. But again, it's heavy opposite field. Lots of ground balls, and like I said, with Anderson, and he smoked that ball at center. He hits the ball really hard when he connects. But what happened, I think, is pitchers just pounded him inside, and he, for whatever reason, his approach does not let him turn on fastballs. He can make contact with them. He had a decent amount of doubles, but his I want to say his WRC plus dropped from like 160 the year before to. So it was 157 in 2023 and was 79 last year, even though he increased his walk rate and his strikeout rate only went up a little bit. His isolated power dropped from 194 to 0.086. So basically, he puts the bat on the ball, but the pitchers learned, you know what, if we throw you inside and not just every time, but you throw you inside, give your breaking balls away, he's not going to do any damage against them. And so he's 26 now. And again, he's not a great defender. He can survive in the outfield. He's probably, fringe average. And he has played some first base in his past, but that's a profile that's not going to work unless he learns to pull the ball in the air more, particularly against velocity. So I don't know. It's he's definitely fallen down our list, and this is probably the last year he's going to be a prospect one way or the other.
Yeah. And there's, especially in an outfield too, that's getting more athletic in terms of guys that are getting quicker and in terms of just quicker guys in the outfield, and the type like that you're not going to see. I'm not saying that the Tigers are not going to have those type, but it just seems like I don't know. It doesn't feel like a type the Tigers would draft going forward.
No, I agree with you. It's closer to like the Kerry Carpenter athletic defensive profile.
Yeah.
Without the power and hitting ability, which is like they'll put up with Carpenter and teach him and help him become as best as he can or as good as he can be on the outfield because he crushes the ball. But you're not going to wedge Justice Bigby into your big league outfield if he's not hitting home runs or hitting for a super high average. And he's going to have to make some real adjustments to get that done. And I'd like to believe he can, because I don't know. I like the guy. He talked to us. He's a nice kid. It's a fun story. He was a 19th round draft pick, but I'm a little bit skeptical that he'll be able to. I think sometimes your swing is just your swing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you open up to the best. And hopefully it's one of those stories where it's something like along the lines of Josh Lester, like you hopefully get this opportunity. And the last one on our list before we call it an evening on this segment is a lead that really, really just came out of nowhere and really had a strong second half of the year. And a guy who became a big fan and believer of in Gabriel Reyes, and number 26. And he has kind of like, I know this sounds weird, like, but if you look at his motion right here, like when it comes to the set, almost reminds me of when, like, how like Pedro Martinez kind of like when he goes in motion, kind of, but on the left hand side a little bit. He's a guy who, again, similar profile in a sense of like just a guy that could possibly start, possibly relieve. But his numbers last year, along with Rainer Castillo, was one of the best 1-2 combos in the Tiger system last year. And he is the Tigers have done a very good job of recently with international guys. But what I like about Reyes too, he just started. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's only pitched. I mean, Tigers drafted him at 17, and so he turns 21 in July. Or I'm sorry, he'll be 22 in July. Be 22 in July. But he had no problem with A ball last year. He had a impressive 12 strikeouts per 9.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely expect him to move up to West Michigan. Last year was his first. He missed all of 2023. So I don't remember what happened. I don't know if it was Tommy John, something else. But he didn't pitch at all in 2023, came back up last year, and really just kept getting better. Like every outing, it kept getting better. It seemed like he was figuring out how to pitch more. He really had Dunedin's number. He struck him out 7 times in one game, 7 times in the next, and then 11 in the one after that. But he's got a swagger about him that you love to see. He's like, it's hard to describe, but he just doesn't seem scared of anything. He's going to come up there and attack you, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. And it's the stuff itself doesn't, jump out metrically. It's the fastball's like 91, 94, which is, still okay for a lefty, right? And it's a lower release slot, and it's kind of an interesting look. It's like the opposite of the high ride fastball. It's still a 4-seamer, but it's got a really low IVB. He also does throw a sinker, and his slider was his out pitch last year, and it's a pretty nasty pitch at times. It kind of, to me, there are times when it kind of looks like a sharp slurve, if that makes any sense. Like it just comes in and then it just drops down and away from left-handed hitters. And he was able to back foot it to righties too. And so that one got him. I'm looking right now. That one got him what was the whiff rate on that? Do I not have the whiff rate here? I don't have the whiff rate. Just 1 second. Let me get that whiff rate for you. All right. The whiff rate on his slider was 46.8% last year.
That will do.
And yes.
And he kept walks down too. He didn't really walk anybody either. Yeah,
he was pounding the strike zone. So, and he looks loose and athletic to me. I feel like he probably can get a little bit more velocity, but and his changeup also had a 40% whiff rate, but that was, he just didn't throw it very often. And that may be one of the reasons behind that. Only 10% of the time he threw it, but 40% whiff rate on that. And changeup's 87 miles an hour. Slider is 85, fastball 93. I agree with you that, like, there is kind of a relieverish look to him. Part of that, I don't know if he falls off the mound a little bit like Anibal Sanchez used to. If that makes any sense. Like it just, but like you said, he got pretty good control, and he's got the pitches of a starter. So keep starting him, make him prove to you that he can't. And so I'm going to be really excited to see what he does in West Michigan. I don't know if anybody else has him as a prospect.
I don't see why not either. I that was the other thing that was kind of mystifying a little bit in terms of like some other lists we've seen. You look at the competition level, you could sit there and say, well, he was at A level, but Rainer Castillo, same guys, but Rainer Castillo's got the much more high visibility than Reyes does. So I don't get it. I mean, but to me,
oh, you know what? Yeah, I just checked. Bless you, boys. You know, Brandon has Reyes 22nd.
okay.
So
Well, then, Brandon knows. Brandon's
well, yeah. I mean, we talked about him every weekend with Brandon, so
Yeah.
of course he's gonna like. So
yeah.
yeah.
I think it beat into his head a little bit, like yeah. So I mean, no, because I remember we had a conversation about Reyes too. I remember on the podcast it was like, all right, so I checked out Gabriel Reyes. All right, you guys were on to something about that. And it's like, it's just because if you look at the body of work the last month of the season too, just dominating. And again, if this translates at West Michigan, then that's a good thing, because he could be one of those guys that I think that it might take him a minute to get used to, because the condition weather-wise, this will be a shock for him, because this will probably be the first time. A lot of those pitchers take a minute to adjust. A lot of the Latin pitchers take a minute to adjust up here, but excuse me. Once I think he does, I think he'll be dynamite. So I'm really, really high on him. Again, my Achilles heel lefties, I don't know why, but at any rate, that is it for this segment, and then we'll start with 25 through 20, right? Or what are we doing?
I don't know if you want to do 25 through 16.
Yeah, we'll do 25 through 16. Yeah, because 25 through 16 is actually really interesting. So yeah, 25 through 16, and that we'll be recording that. That'll be next one on a little playlist. We create a little playlist for you, make things easy, simple. And then don't forget to go to our website, TigersMLReport.com. Check out the written article component of this, which will be out shortly. But if you're a Patreon member, you already had an opportunity to read that, and I think that's me doing those reports. So check it out. Let us know what you think. We appreciate the feedback and support as always. Our Patreon link our GoFundMe link is also there as well for a chance for us to go to spring training and beyond. Helps us with costs, everything. So thank you for supporting Tigers Mile Report. Thank you for checking out all our content, and we'll talk to you on the next one with starting at number 25 and a tall right-hander. And that's all I'm going to say about that. It could be anybody. We'll talk to you then.